Good morning, students. Myself, Munshi Rashidul Islam, Assistant Professor of Department of Mechanical Engineering, JS College of Engineering. Now we can start a new lesson. That lesson is actually the belt drive, design of belt drive. So first of all, what is drive and what is belt drive, and why we can choose the design of belt drive. So a belt drive are actually a device which is used to transmission of motion and power from one shaft to another shaft by the medium of belt. So that is actually defined as a drive because drive means where the two system are there. One is driver, another is driven. Two members are there. So similarly, as we know that in gear design, there will be a driver and a driven system. So similarly, belt drive is obviously a drive system, and it is basically a system that can easily flexible to transmit torque or power or motion with some center distance and between the driving and driven shaft, and obviously the two shafts are two pulleys. When the two pulleys are easily placed into some distance, and that some distance we can easily transmit torque and power or motion in terms of the with the help of the belt. And belt is actually a flat or v belt, any type of belt that can I use for the design purpose, but basically the function of this system will be same. So we can use either in flat belt or in v belt or rope belt. Different types of belt are there. So a belt is a loose strip of flexible material used to mechanically link more than two rotating shafts or two rotating pulleys where are present. We can easily apply the belt drive system, and that system is very easier and less cost, and the maintenance charge or maintenance cost is very less rather than the gear drives. So these are the advantage of belt drives, and some disadvantage obviously there that I discuss later. So first, why it is used, why this type of drive system we can use. So first, a source of motion that can be used as a source of motion. Number two, to efficiently transmit power, that I also mentioned that the motion, torque and power can be transmitted by the belt drive. And next is to track the relative movement. To track the relative movement, that also be very important to design the belt drive. So one disadvantage of this belt drive, that is sleep. So sleeping chance is more than the other system because it is a there will be a basically two types of transmission belts. One is flat belt and another is V belt. So flat belt maximum tendency has to slipping from the pulley, but in v belt there are less slipping chance is there. So first of all we have to know that why we choose the v belt rather than the flat belt. So v belt means in v belt there will be a support in beside two in two sides, but in flat belt no supports will be there. Only the belt are wrapping the pulleys over the entire periphery of the pulleys. So one pulley is bigger pulley and another is small pulley. So that may be vice versa. One is driver, another is driven. So next is belt or looped over pulleys. So first one, in a two pulleys, belt can either drive the same direction or in the opposite direction. And and we have to know that why slipping chance is more in flat belt rather than the V belt, and what are the effect if slipping is occur. So first of all, we have to know that what are the causes of the slip, and then what are the effect of the causes and effect of the slip. So first, suppose you see the flat belt, and there will be a bound of slipping and the sliding between the two shafts or pulleys when the two pulleys are in the surfaces due to some reasons. Number one, the load on the drive goes beyond the design value. Number one. Number two, the belt tension means all the belts have two tensions. One is tight side and another is slack side. So tight side tension always much bigger than the slack sides. So point number two, the belt tensions exceeds the permission limits. Number three, the belt becomes slack due to stretching. So belt have a tendency to stretch because the belt have a tendency elastic property. So that may be due to some frictional occurrence between the pulleys and belt material. So belt can be extended or belt may be failed. So some elasticity property will be there. So for that property, belt may be extend, so or maybe fail. So that is the main cause of slipping. Because elasticity, when elasticity property less, the material has a tendency, or may the belt have a tendency to slipping in the pulleys. Now next point is the coefficient of friction between the belt and the pulley surface drop due to the presence of some accident, and that accident may be happen either in if we use oil or grease or any other frictional resistance um, frictional resistance equipment or frictional resistance equipment if I use. That is the main criteria of the slipping. Now next, types of belt drive. Sorry, mainly two types of belt drive are four types of belt drive are there. Number one, flat belt. Number B, V belt. Number C, ribbed belt, and number D, tooth belt. But for most of the cases, we can design or we can use the two types of belt. That is, first one is flat belt and second one is V belt. In flat belt, the two systems are there. One system is open belt drive and another system is cross belt drive. So that is actually figure of open belt drive. Suppose in flat belt drive, the total mechanism will be simple and no complexity is there. Simplest and least expensive of all means of power transmission system, and that will be depends on the belt of rubber material, leather material, canvas, and any other rubber or fabric can be used as a bell material, and that material is very important role plays to carry on the total uh, total belt weight. So the properties of the flat belt material that can be used as per the conditions. So number one, the material should have adequate tensile strength to resist the tension in the any operations of the belt systems. Number two, the coefficient of friction between the two belt or in mm, between the two belts or in pulley, but the pulleys may be in same direction or maybe in different direction. But obviously, the pulley's distance should be maintained with proper boundings. And third one is the belt material should be able to withstand the abrasion and also wear, especially with the high speed operation. And fourth one is belt has a tendency to pull with a high efficiency or a high frequency. The belt should have very the belt should have very flexible with high rigidity, and that means the belt may be failed or not may be failed, but uh, it can be considered as it may be failed, or we assume that the material of the belt should be with high resistance, and obviously it can withstand with maximum load. That load can carry with different direction. Now next, in flat belt there are mainly two types. One is open belt drive, another is flat belt drive, cross belt drive. And in open belt drive, typical problem that may be calculate with the length of the belt for a given wheel dimensions or wheel systems. Suppose if you see this figure, this figure means the current slide figure. There are two system are there. Two systems are there means one system is pulley, another system is belt. So the two pulleys, suppose one is driving pulley, another is driven pulley. So if pulley one is rotated with clockwise direction, so obviously pulley 2 means driven pulley also rotate in same direction, because it is actually open belt drive. Now next is cross belt drive, sorry, open belt drive, and there are some certain point. That point is to be considered for the design purpose. First one is angle of contact. And the angle of contact means how much portion will cover by the belt. That is actually the angle of contact. Pitch line means the line which is passing through the belt middle point of this width section. Belt thickness, that obviously the how much thickness will be there in belt portion. Center distance, obviously the two shaft or two pulleys center distance, center to center distance is called center distance. And all the parameter that already explained. Now next, that is actually a problem based on, that is actually a simple problem based on um, uh, based on open belt drive. So In open wheel drive, the length of the belt that can be calculated. So that problem is the figure will be same just before this slide, but the difference is that the following are the details of cross belt drive. Calculate the length of the belt. So before this, we have to calculate the um, um, the- see the cross belt figure. That is actually the cross belt. Cross belt means the actually figure of this belt conditions will be with just cross conditions with x view. X view means the lower portion of the driver is passing through the upper portion of the driven pulley, and driven pulley lower portion is passing through the upper pulley. That is actually cross product type, and for that reason it is actually a standard type belt drive. And that type of belt drive system, and the sleeping chance will um, less. No sleeping chance will be there, because it is actually a high power or high torque transmission capacity purpose it can be used. It is a versatile system, and that is used as a center to center distance. Now, the following points that I already mentioned, that the two system, one is open wheel drive and another is cross wheel drive. Both the system we can consider the total length of the belt. So total length of the belt that can be calculated from the this problem if the all the parameters are given. Suppose the diameter of the driver of this problem, you have to find out the length of the belt. So suppose the diameter of the driver is 200 millimeter, diameter of the follower 400 millimeter, and center to center distance is 2 meter. The speed of the driver is 400 rpm, and angle of contact, that means the theta angle, theta is 197.3. So all the parameters are given, and we just concluded that the driver pulley is D1 and driven pulley is or follower is D2. So D1 D2 C is actually counted as a center distance, and if I put all the value, we can easily get the center distance. Now next, that is actually the pictorial view of flat belt, and that flat belt is already um, calculated, or I already mentioned in the previous two slides. So in this flat belt, if we see that in this flat belt, the only the flat is wrapping over the entire surface of the pulley, so there will be a high possibility to slip or creep the belt. So one question will there: what is creep of the belt? So creep of the belt is actually a inverted phenomena in the belt drives. Creep gives high to a relative motion of the belt over the surface of the driving pulley, and that is actually based on the tight side tension and slack side tension. And obviously the two sides tension can be calculated, and as the tension of the belt is reduced, the belt shrinks in length. That means this result, the belt length will be contract, and contract means a slight reduction of the speed will happen. That reduction of the speed of the driven pulley and creep adversely affect the transmission of the efficiency also. That also be very important to count the different types mode of the creep in the value. So that is actually the case of the creep in belts. So next point is V wells. V wells are also more prone to the creep since the tension are higher. Tension in higher means if we see the V well portion, if we see the V well portion, the elasticity of the material of belt can be achieved by some certain limit, but in flat belt it can be extended up to the limit when it cannot be reached with some certain external agent. That means if due to friction, temperature rise, etc. So for that cases, V belt is more compact than the V belt in the creep of the belt. Now next point, that is actually V belt, and I already explained this. And as this figure is in the English letter V type, for that cases it named as V belt, and obviously in this type of belt less number of tendency will and less chance to slipping. Timing belt and the round belt, that is not. um, Next point is when we use the belt drives. When should we use the belt drive? That means advantage of belt drives. So advantage of belt drive, that means I already explained the advantage and disadvantage part of the belt drive. Besides this, again we can mention some points. That point is to be discussed in the following matter. Now, number one point is in the belt drive, it is very simple and they are economical. This is very economical and simple. Number two, parallel shafts are not required. That means if we are not used in parallel shaft, it cannot be required for must fulfillment of the total engagement system. Point number three, overload and jam protection are provided. Point number four, noise and vibrations are damped out. Machinery life is prolonged because load fluctuations are cushioned, or that means shock absorbed. Point number five, they are lubrication free. That means no lubrication system will not be applied. Hmm. They require only low maintenance. Next point is they are highly efficient. They are highly efficient means that means in the belt drive 90 to 98%, 98%, usually 95%. Some misalignment is tolerable. Point number seven, they are very economical when shafts are separated by large distance. That means when the large distance is any cases. uh, so for that cases, they are very economical. Next, disadvantage of drive. Disadvantages of belt drive. So disadvantage means uh, in any system, power transmission system or power driving systems, advantage and disadvantage both are there. So advantage, most of the advantages are very uh, very important to point out the all the parameters that I already mentioned in the previous slides. So obviously I can speak some disadvantage because it is not the foolproof of 100%. Some drawbacks will be there. So that drawbacks I mentioned now. Now number one, the angular velocity ratio is not necessarily constant and equal to the ratio of pulley diameter because of belt slip and stretch. That means the angular velocity is not necessary. So it means it cannot be different for the different shape of the belt, either in V belt, rope belt, cross belt, or open belt. Any type of belt, it is not necessary for angular velocity movement, and that is the point number one. And it is equal, always equal to the ratio of the pulley diameter and also the belt slip. Now, next point is heat buildup occurs. Heat buildup occurs means during the rotation of the movement of belt and pulley, some heat will be happen. Heat will generate. That means the speed is limited. Heat buildup occurs. Speed is limited to usually 7,000 feet per minute. So that means uh, 35 meter per second. 7,000 feet per minute means 35 meter per second, and power transmission is limited to 370 kilowatt. That means 500 horsepower. It is actually tolerable. But one question will be there: in day by day uses in same belt, and more and more heat will generate during the rotation of the pulley and belt. So obviously the belt tension, due to the belt tension and also the heat generation between the two conducting faces or surfaces, the belt will be hampered for that lifelong operation. So obviously it can be happened if we use properly as some good guidelines. Next point is operating temperature are usually restricted to 31 to 185 Fahrenheit. That means that from minus 35 to 85 degrees centigrade. So that I already mentioned that the temperature induced temperature that is not required. That temperature, that induced temperature, it if I release that from the belt to the atmosphere, it is very effective for the life of belt. So that means it is actually very sophisticated case of the belt system. If I easily dissipate the heat, generated heat to the atmosphere, and that is best way to the release this heat. And next is some adjustment of the center distance to use the idler pulley is necessary for wear and stretch compensation. Some adjustment of center distance. So center distance may be changed when it may be we can use if long distance will be there. So for that type of long distance we can use a idler pulley if necessary for wear and stress compensation. And obviously wear and stress compensation, if we reduce, obviously idler pulley that is actually idle conditions, no function will be there, but use as a helping hand for that type of adjustment of belt drive portion. Now last point is A means of disassembly must be provided to install endless belts. That means disassemble of belt type system, we can easily assemble or disassemble if we endless belt, if we can install in each of the portion of the belt type system. That is actually the case of the total disadvantages and advantages mechanism, types and all the types of belts, and how much length will be in open belt, cross belt, etc. All the portions we will discuss in these classes, and next classes we can discuss with new topic. Thank you.